Hey everyone, so I wanted to make this video to discuss how to strategize during a race. Some of the different things that should be going through your head as a driver, maybe some of the stuff that I tend to think about while I'm driving, ultimately how to get us to the finish line ahead of the opponents in front of you. So let's get into it. So there's a few key points that we need to discuss. The first point is the length of the race. Is this going to be a race that's going to be 10 laps where things got to happen pretty quickly? Or do you have 30 laps to plan a move and make something happen? That's where we want to start. The second thing would be the tire life. How old are your tires? How much grip do they have? As a driver, it's up to you to know when the tires are going to overheat, when you can push them too far and when you can't push them too far. That's extremely important. The third thing we want to discuss is what's the opponent's pace versus what's your pace. If you're trying to pass somebody, are they running the same lap times as you? Are you faster than them? Are they obviously quicker than you? That's going to determine how you make your move and when you make it. And the fourth and final thing is really how to plan out your passing opportunity. Where's the most appropriate spot to make it happen? How to take advantage of the driver in front of you, where their strengths are and where their weaknesses are. So this was probably one of my favorite races at Oakland Valley. We can see off the start here, we get off to a pretty bad start and wind up shuffling ourselves out in fourth place. So this is a good video that should emphasize or highlight a lot of the stuff that we discussed previously. Starting with the length of the race, this is a pre-final at Oakland Valley. So for our class, that means we're usually racing somewhere around 12 laps. If we average around 40 seconds per lap, that leaves us only about 8 minutes on the track, for total run time. So with that being said, we gotta make things happen pretty quick. Jumping into tire life, tire life's important here because, it depends on what compound tire you're using. Are you on a sticky tire that has a lot of grip and is going to have a lot of grip throughout the whole race? Are you on a harder compound tire where it's much easier to overheat them, it's easier to slide around? In our case, we're running MG Reds. So MG has really enhanced the compound this year. The tires have quite a bit more grip and quite a bit more life. Last year's tires, you could overheat them in 2 turns and they'd pretty much be shot for, the next 3 laps. With these harder tires, you can slide around a little bit more, and it only takes a few turns for them to get back to the proper temperature so that you can race again. Definitely hats off to MG. The HCI, which is the new compound, has worked out terrific for us. It's actually cut off about a second per lap, in comparison to last year. And just find that it lasts longer and it's much more drivable. So right about now, this is probably lap 3 or lap 4. This is about when I like my tires to come in. A lot of people have a different opinion on when you want the tires to come in. I tend to run a little bit of a harder tire pressure and have the tires come in on the first 3, 4, or 5 laps. This way I can pretty much attack immediately. A lot of guys I race with, I know a good friend of mine, Chris Rock, doesn't understand why I do that. He prefers to wait a little bit and kind of let things pan out, whereas I'm always attacking right off the bat, so he likes to poke fun at me for that. But I usually like to have some sort of a strategy figured out by lap 4 or lap 5 as far as what I'm going to do. And, part of that strategy, diving a little further into what we discussed, is, finding out where the strengths and the weaknesses of your opponents are. So we're behind the driver number 69 and we're behind the driver number 44 here. And obviously the first guy we got to pass is number 69. So following him for the past couple laps, I can see that his rear end is moving around quite a bit. Quite a bit on exit, it looks like. So we're getting a little bit of a better exit speed than him on some of these turns. So more or less at this point in time, we're just waiting for a mistake to happen. And right on cue, there it is. The number 69, his rear end steps out, and we're able to take advantage of his mistake. So now following cart number 44, and another thing we want to consider too is the cart number 69 is behind us. I mean, the 3 of us here are running nearly similar lap times. And you can see right here, I go down the middle of the track because I made a pretty substantial mistake coming onto the straightaway, and thought for sure the number 69 was going to have a run up my inside. But that, for some reason, wasn't the case. Maybe he wasn't quite close enough or hadn't recovered completely from his earlier mistake. So we got a few cart links here that we have to make up. Coming back to tire life here, you can see now that these tires got quite a bit more grip. The cart's responding more positively to my input. As far as the pace of the opponent goes, his pace is pretty much on point with ours. It looks like we're running pretty similar lap times here. So, again, this is going to come down to who's going to make a mistake first. It's extremely easy at this point in the race now to say to yourself, okay, I have 5 or 6 cart links I have to make up. Let's drive as hard as I can to catch this guy. And that could actually put you at a bit of a disadvantage here. Our tires are pretty well right now. They have a pretty decent amount of grip, okay? If we go forward and we overdrive this go-kart, all we're going to do is overheat the tires and give an advantage to the guy behind us. Strategy-wise, in my head right now, what I'm thinking to myself is second place isn't such a bad position to start in for the final. The final's going to give me 15 laps to put myself in a better position to make something happen. We all know right now that if I go forward and I blow this go-kart off of one of the turns because my tires are overheated and hit a barrier, that's going to ruin this entire race, and it's going to ruin the entire next race for us. So inside my head right now, I'm telling myself, drive easy, drive your pace. If we wind up catching up to this guy, then we can make something happen. We can see here that the cart number 44 is starting to get a lot of the same tendencies that the cart number 69 had in the beginning. We can see through the box turn there that his rear tires are starting to overheat a little bit. He's starting to slide around. He may be overdriving the cart just a little bit, trying to keep his lead. And as a driver inside my head, I've noticed this immediately, and I know that my opportunity should come up some point within the next 2 laps because a mistake will be made. So we can see here that a bit of easy driving paid off. We didn't overdrive the go-kart. We've caught up to the cart number 44, who's probably on a more used up set of tires than us. And we wind up getting a pretty good run onto this straightaway. And the cart number 44 thinks, for some reason, we're going to have the shot down low. And so he decides to guard the bottom line, which works out pretty well for us because we're able to pull a pretty good crossover going into turn 2. And we can see from here, we're actually able to stick this move pretty well. So now that we're in the lead, the strategy here is going to change a whole bunch. Going back to opponent's pace versus your pace. Okay, I know here that I was able to take this position only based on the fact that the guy in front of me made a mistake. Okay? I know in my head his pace versus my pace, he's running a lap time that's maybe a tenth, maybe 2/10 quicker than me. So you can see that my strategy for the rest of this race is going to be guarding my line, running a bit of a defensive position for the last 2 laps. And of course, not making any mistakes that give him any advantage to, try and pass me here. So when you find yourself in this type of a position, there's only 2 or 3 laps left. I wouldn't normally, leading a race, I wouldn't normally run quite a defensive line like this. The only real reason we're doing this is because I'm definitely aware of the fact that he is a little bit quicker than me and he is all over my rear bumper. So something else that we haven't discussed yet, and we can see that there's a cart coming up on us here, is lap traffic. When you're leading a race or you're in the top 3, 4, 5 guys and you approach a lapped cart, what do? Well, I find that there's 2 different types of lap drivers. There's the lap driver that gets completely out of the way because he doesn't want to have any type of contact, and that's great. There's also the type of lap driver that has absolutely no idea that you're coming and doesn't move off the racing line at all. So, as the guy doing the lapping, he does have a right to the racing line, so you have to make sure that you make, an appropriate pass and, don't ruin his day and don't ruin yours. I mean, chances are you were that driver at some point in time too. The driver's probably a little bit uncomfortable. Go by the guy, give him some room, and hopefully he gives you some room too. So we can see here that our defensive position for the last 2 laps paid off pretty well. We were able to hold off the driver who arguably had a better pace than us. And I'm pretty sure at the end of the race, his lap times were a tenth or two quicker than us. But again, strategy-wise, we were just able to wait for the drivers to make a mistake, and ultimately that led to us taking the first position. So just a quick summary to pull together all the points that we discussed. The length of the race is important. We can see here that it was a very short race, okay? We had to strategize and figure out immediately what we were going to do. Tire life, we drove that entire race and we didn't once overheat the tires, which was great. Okay, so we definitely succeeded on that platform. Opponent's pace, we immediately recognized the opponent's pace. The number 69 we were able to get by because of a mistake. He was running about the same lap times. And the 44 we were able to get by arguably because of what I would say was a mistake, and he was probably running lap times that were a little bit quicker than ours. We planned our passing opportunities, we strategized, and the strategy completely changed once we got up into the top position. So, it's important to reevaluate your strategy. Sure, you may go into a race having a strategy, okay, but let's say you're starting 5th place and all of a sudden the top 4 guys wipe out on turn 1 and you're in 1st place. And then you think to yourself, oh crap, I didn't even think this was going to happen. What do I do now? Well, you need to be able to think on the fly what's going to happen. Driving goes so much further, especially racing, goes so much further than just the brake pedal, the gas pedal, and the steering wheel. I would argue that 70% of what really goes on in a race doesn't have anything to do with those things at all, but is really more to do with how you are racing your opponent. It gets to the point where you'll become good enough of a driver where lap times won't make a difference. You can put as much seat time as you want in, but what really winds up making the difference is how you're able to outmaneuver the people around you on the track. And that is the hopeful goal of this video. Hopefully it sheds a little bit of light on some of that and starts getting some of the drivers to start thinking further than just the gas pedal and the steering wheel.